Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Co-host Rich Gear, and we have a special guest with us, Derek. Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
This is Derek Marshall.
Derek Marshall, yes. And
he's been a regular on our program for quite a while.
Regular now, all right.
yeah.
It's good to have you back, Derek. And he's our physics expert. And when I went to the conference in North Carolina State University, one of the speakers that we had there was Dr. D. Russell Humphreys. And he's a fellow who is really doing quite a bit of work in the area of physics and
Age of the universe, age of the universe,
Cosmology.
and we're appreciative of what he had to say. And there was one talk that he gave that I wasn't able to record. And so what we're going to do tonight is to take his PowerPoint and go over the points in his talk, and it's called Evidence for a Young World.
Okay.
And back in 1999, we also put this particular article on our website.
Right.
He had written an article about this.
Right.
And this was actually one of his better points that he had concerning whether or not the Earth is young, and in his case, he's got good proof that the solar system is young, and pretty much most of the universe is young.
Right, because even in the creation thing, Doug, we have different people. There are people that are old Earth creationists.
Right.
There are people that are young Earth but old universe creationists. And then there's the people like me and a lot of us. I think that old universe, or young universe and young Earth. And so the point, and we think that's the strongest biblical thing, even though the universe we know has a lot of interesting things that people talk about that we'll talk about. And what I think that the PowerPoint that Russ, we were going over a little bit earlier, is fascinating how many arguments really indicate a young world, young universe. And we'll get into that a little bit here. But what I like about Russ, Doug, is he does both the science and the biblical thing.
Right.
He's unapologetic that his worldview is formed by his biblical worldview. And he makes no apologies for it, but he thinks that the science goes right part and parcel. He's made predictions over the years, and they've come to pass, based on his biblical worldview and his cosmology, which was developed from it. So I'm very appreciative of Russ. Right? We've had him on our show a couple of times in years past. He's just a brilliant guy, but a very he's not snobby at all. He's just a really down to earth kind of a guy. But so you got a chance to do a recording, but not of his particular thing. But you got his PowerPoint thing.
Yeah, I did another recording of him where he talked about his planetary magnetic fields.
Okay.
And that presentation was awesome as well.
Yeah,
you can actually order that on our website. So shameless plug there. But let's take a look at what he is talking about in terms of what does it mean young, because we're talking about thousands of years rather than millions of years.
Right.
And if you look in the Ten Commandments, there's one of the commandments that talks about the Sabbath day, and it talks about for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and that's Exodus 20:11. And so it's saying that like the Sabbath day, in this context, it was ordinary days, and it was not used a long time, which like could be an eon. There's a Hebrew word for that, or there could be 20,000 years. There's another Hebrew word for 20,000 years, and then still another set of Hebrew words that means 10 million to 1 billion years.
So they had concept of unending eons or long. They had words for that. It's just that none of them were used in the biblical text for the creation. And so that's where Humphrey starts. He starts from that premise. This is where it is. I mean, and of course, I mean, for truth in lending or truth or full disclosure. Why is young Earth so important to creationists? Why is or to at least why they call them YECers, the young Earth creationists?
Right.
Why is that so important?
It's because Jesus Christ himself talked about it.
Well, he did talk about that, yes.
He implied that the world was young. And it says in Mark what is it?
10:16.
10:6. And from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. And so, we're talking about Scripture, talking about Adam and Eve, and that was the very first man and woman. So Jesus himself, that was his quote.
I think the whole thing too, Doug, is the Scripture does not really allow, when you look at, of course, we've done shows on chronology work that I've done, and other people have done and the biblical text is very straightforward. Even people who believe in old earth will admit that on the surface of it, a straightforward reading of it, you don't get a world much more than about 6,000 years old. You just don't get there. And it also basically, you have issues with long ages. We've talked about many times about death before Adam and all that kind of stuff. From a biblical worldview, it makes no sense to have long ages of death and suffering. So, anyway,
we're going to get into the science, and we're going to let Derek talk about this, because this is his...
He goes, oh wait, scrub that on me. That's okay. Wait,
you guys know about that stuff. I have a few comments among whatever comments that you have, but I was pleasantly surprised with this presentation, because my introduction to Dr. Humphreys was through Starlight and Time, which when I was in school, my interest was in cosmology. I've kind of branched away from that a little bit, but not totally anyway. But to find that this work is more, a lot of it's very down to earth, that you'll see when we talk about these different topics, that he's talking about things that are very planetary, very much down to earth. And I consider this some of his best work. I mean, I'm a fervent admirer of his work, because he's really the one that, when I made my decision which way to go with my physics, am I going to go into more of a secular physics or use it towards creationism, picking up Starlight and Time really kind of challenged me to use my findings for creationism, and I have not looked back since from that. So, but as much as I love Starlight and Time, I certainly really was pleasantly surprised with this.
What I like is he lists in his presentation 56 different ones. There may be more than that, but he was 56, and he kind of goes through several of these points. So you want to bullet point a couple of them that are really interesting to you?
We'll just follow the outline. He dings off about 11 of them. I don't necessarily have to comment on all of them, but I do have a comment on all of them.
Fair enough. But 90% of them give dates within 10,000 years or less.
Right.
And then there's 10% that gives the dates that are old. And we've done shows on those 10% before, but we'll talk about the ones that are actually yield the young dates. And there's a publication, if you want to go to icr.org and look up the article called Evidence for a Young World. Or you can go to rae.org, and I think a similar article is out on our website, yworld.html. You can go to that, and you can find our article about that.
A lot of resources there.
Yeah.
So the first one to talk about is galaxies wind themselves up too fast. Now, Derek, you're the spiral guy.
Yeah, the
Well, you see, I don't think a lot of people realize when they look at a galaxy or they look at a spiral shape, they look at it as kind of a messy type of thing that's just kind of like a result, like if you pull the plug on a drain, you get the spiral pattern in your sink. It's kind of like things are going to crack, right?
Yeah.
But actually, a spiral is a calling card of Christ, and it's a stability structure, because everything that grows in a spiral fashion. It may not look like it, but it's how we're able to live and grow at the same time. It's kind of like if you're trying to build a building, or if you're trying to fix a submarine. I think is an example that Doug likes to give. You can't fix a submarine and operate it at the same time. And it's a miracle that a baby can grow into a child, into an adult, grow, and also live at the same time. That's because everything grows in a very even-handed fashion, and it grows in a spiral fashion.
You know, I'm talking like a galaxy, like it's alive or something, you know. But
a spiral is a very interesting mathematical feature. It is that its rate of change is the same as its position, meaning if you take a spiral, any particular position on that spiral is the same value as its rate of change. So everything is growing and maintaining the same position, the same relative position as the spiral grows. And that is instrumental in life. So when you look at a galaxy like this, that has the spiral pattern, I see stability there.
Right.
That's the evidence of stability.
But it's supposed to be 10 billion years old, the age of a galaxy. But it's less than 0.3 billion years old in terms of
It's the maximum.
maximum in the wind-up. And then the other information, this was his seminal work, is how starlight could get here fast.
Right. The idea is that that spiral should get more fuzzy and fuzzy with time.
Yeah.
And we see that the spiral is not fuzzy and fuzzy.
They're still
It's very,
tight.
very tight.
Yeah.
Which I see the spiral, I can see the order, and I can see the stability there.
The other item it talks about is that there's not enough star explosion smoke from supernovas. And we'd expect to see quite a few of those out in, the near universe is billions of years old.
That's what cosmologists have been,
Right.
the evolutionary, and expect to see a lot of this background,
Right.
dust or what is it? What is
Yes.
this?
Well,
Star
there was a supernova that was like in 1066 or something like that, that became what we see now as the Crab Nebula. And it was only, we only see 200 of these out in outer space. And this is also true for the Magellanic Clouds. And so there's only 7,000 to 14,000 years worth of these.
Well, on that star exploding thing, I would ask the question, normally when you have a situation like star formation, star explosion, or stars that are disintegrating, there's some sort of, in physics and in chemistry, you have equilibrium. Like you have an equilibrium between condensation and evaporation. Everything is condensing and evaporating at the same time, but they do at equal rates. So is there an equilibrium between stars forming and stars exploding? If it was a long-term process or a sustainable process over billions of years, I would expect to see an equilibrium, meaning stars are exploding and stars are forming, maintaining somewhat of a status quo. But another thing, this particular one reminded me of an article that I read that if you read the Bible in Revelation, if I have the scripture here, Revelations 12:4 implies that Satan has control of a third of the stars. Well, recently, this is 2015, I read an article where they studied 100,000 stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And they are able to determine where those stars were formed based upon their constituency. And 1/3 of those stars were far away from where they were formed, according to what they are made of. And I thought that was a rather interesting find there. That's what this star smoke reminded me of. That's very interesting that we don't see a lot more star smoke.
Right.
I like that term.
Now, then the next one is comets crumble too quickly. And we have observed, like Halley's Comet. It comes around every 76 years. And my grandmother was around to see it twice.
Really?
She was 5 years old when it came in 1910, and then in 1986 she was here too. But
1910, it came. Isn't that where it came very close to the Earth at one time? People were afraid that was the end of the end of the world. It's part of the tail that by.
Last time it came, it was actually more visible in the southern part of the world than it was here. So
yeah, I was kind of disappointed. It was more the Hale-Bopp one. I saw that a lot longer. That was around for several
Comet
days.
Kohoutek was my era.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw that one then too. That one, yeah, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's interesting that they're supposed to be like 5 billion years old or so. But the lifetime in the solar system is about less than 10.
Yeah, this one here.
That's by the sun. It loses material.
Yeah, it's obvious. These comets are really, really affected by the sun. If they come anywhere near the sun.
What you really have to do, and this is really science fiction, you have to propose then they do propose this, they reform comets, but then you have to have the same exact comet being reformed. So,
Right, yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me.
No,
I remember I was like in 7th grade and I asked the question, well, how are these comets orbits so elongated, you know? And actually the secularists have a fairly good theory that they were perturbed by, they were coming into the solar system and perturbed by Jupiter or one of the larger planets, and then it comes in towards the sun, and then
I think these large coronal mass ejections, I mean, you have a sun that's 99% of the mass of the solar system, and then it one day it ejects a huge amount of its material out into space. That's got to have a counterbalance somewhere of a like mass of some sort. And I just kind of wonder how that resolves itself. You just can't eject matter from something and not affect all these little pieces of matter that are all over the solar system. So I'm wondering if that's a source of perturbation, as Doug is suggesting.
But I mean, comets basically an ice ball.
it's a
Ball ice and dust.
It's a gravitational perturbation, because as it comes in, it's deflected, and then between the large planet and the sun, you have it's slowing down to the fact that it goes into orbit. So another one is that sea-floored mud accumulates too.
Well, now we're getting down to Earth.
Right.
We're getting down from
This is the one that
space
surprised me.
down into Earth. Seafloor mud accumulates too fast. That one I remember years ago, Doug. I thought that was an amazingly cool argument. And when you went really, really into it, we can't really get into all the ins and outs of it, but it's interesting, you know.
But this one here is, so if you go to the mountains anywhere, and I've lived out in California for quite a few years and loved the mountains, lived out in the desert for a year for radio school. And if you see the sharpness of these mountains, a lot of these rock formations are so sharp and defined. How could that be when you've had a billion years of rain?
Right, yeah.
Raining on
But
us?
again, to me, evolution along ageism,
You know, and that's gonna be
it's what I call stutter theology. You have to do it again.
Yeah, that's an incredible amount of rock and sediment that's got to be washed off.
It
these
washes
mountains.
out and then
where does it
reforms,
go?
and then washes down and reforms.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that. That's everything they do is like that. When we get to the magnetic field, the comet,
It all comes back
It all
to
comes
cycle.
back.
Well, let's
Recycle.
give these numbers
You know,
here.
so
The mud entering the sea floor is 20 billion tons a year. And mud that's leaving is 1 billion tons per year. And so there's
the circle's 19 billion tons.
there's like a subducting plate that goes underneath the...
Right.
Oh, okay.
It kind of gets mushed up by the comet.
And so it says, really, this is not something that the maximum age is 12 million years. And so the sea is not salty enough.
Here's another one that surprised me.
Yeah, that was a good one.
This one's good because the sodium it takes in 450 million tons per year, but out it takes 120 million tons per year. And so all that accumulation of sea salt that isn't accounted for in our...
It doesn't add up. And if anybody's ever had a saltwater tank with marine life, fish in there, the balance, that salt content has to be very meticulously maintained.
Right.
Just like if you have the sea, the ocean, if there's too much salt, nothing lives in it. If there's not enough salt, there's too much
So based
microbial.
on the present rates of
Yeah.
salt that's in the sea now, the maximum age we're going to get is 62 million years.
Yeah, there's no...
There's got to be some sort of, you do need some sort of equilibrium, not just an arbitrary addition of salt over 450 million years. That would not work.
And this is not taking into account the Genesis flood, which would explain why the amount of salt we had.
Which is even more than we would expect probably, yeah.
And said, and this is what he's talking about, this is his signature work, is that the Earth's magnetic field is losing energy too fast. It loses half its energy every 1,400 years.
Wow, think about that.
And so, he takes his prediction of a maximum magnetic field at the time of creation and its decay rate going back, and the maximum would be about 8,000 years. Beyond that, have enough energy to be like a magnetic star.
Right.
You think about that, yeah, it's like,
I think in my own work, I see that this is going to be one of the players in the tribulation in the end times, this magnetic field. I think that's going to be one of the items that causes trouble for the Earth. Because I believe that the magnetic field is kind of like a placenta for the Earth. And it has kind of like a Christ-like feature where it's protecting the Earth, holding the Earth, and protecting it from the solar radiation that's coming from the sun.
You think about the time
and
of-
plus, even if you look at Aurora Borealis, it looks like a garment, the edge of a garment, when the northern lights kicks up. So that's what kind of clued me in on that.
Now, I asked Russ about that, and he said that he doesn't think that, the effects of losing the magnetic field would have that much effect.
I think what he meant there was if the poles reversed. If you lose the magnetic field, we're in a hurt locker. If the poles reverse, that's what is maybe not. Because that's what keeps all the solar radiation and from all of the gamma radiation from space from killing us is the magnetic field.
is that right?
Yeah. So I think what he meant there, or what was said there, is the poles reverse, because over time the poles have reversed on Earth. We can see that in a lot of the rocks. And
he.
I think there's a slide here a little bit later
He
that
talks about
shows
the
that.
reversals that happened during
Yeah,
Genesis.
so a pole reversal, we really don't know how that would affect us. But no magnetic field, that's going to affect us, guaranteed.
Well, that's not what he said.
Oh, okay.
But they aren't worried about the effects of the magnetic field going away for the same reason I'm not, and that is that the magnetic field doesn't do all that much as far as what would happen if the magnetic field went to zero, which it wouldn't with this kind of constant percentage per year decay. It would never theoretically go to zero. It would get pretty small, but the magnetic field would, if it went away, the production of carbon-14 in the atmosphere would increase by 10%. We'd stop getting these beautiful aurora patterns at the north and south poles, but the radiation from cosmic rays wouldn't increase that much because of the thick blanket of air around the Earth. And then the time scale is too small for the cosmic rays to blow away any significant part of our atmosphere, which is the only thing they'd worry about. And they're not worried about that either because the time scale is short. So in other words, aside from a few birds and bacteria that use the field to navigate, nothing spectacular would happen.
So,
Okay, sorry.
I don't know,
I don't believe me. I don't want to be outside if
What
there's
is
no
it?
magnetic
Yeah,
field.
what does it mean if you
Yeah,
have?
plus, you
yeah,
have to
I think
understand also is
it has
that
the protection from the cosmic rays, I think.
in electronics, when you have a change in current flow, that energy is latent in the magnetic field. The magnetic field collapses and expands with the in and outs of current. Now, if you have a magnetic field and it collapses, where does all that energy go?
I don't know.
So that's another question that's in my mind.
He has a book a new book called Earth's Mysterious Magnetism, and you can order this as an e-book or order it as a regular book from the Creation Research Society. And so, or on Amazon.com. Now, this is something that's been verified pretty recently, is that biological material mutates or decays too fast. And so DNA should be gone after 300 generations.
Yeah, they got one
According to
Conqueror
John.
Eve, what, a couple 100,000 years, and he's saying 6,000 is about all you can get.
That's right, yeah.
Because of the decay of the DNA.
Well, any molecule that's as large as a DNA molecule is going to be extremely sensitive to environmental factors.
Yeah.
I mean, a change in temperature would cleave that in a
It
heartbeat.
does right into the DNA in amber, all the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World stuff.
Yeah, it'd be less than 10,000 years.
Instead of 135 million years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Permian bacteria has been revived.
Yeah.
After
They've revived it.
260 million years. No.
yeah,
10,000.
10,000,
Less than
10,000 years. And
This is
so
what we talked about. I love this.
then dinosaur blood cells, you'd expect them to be, of course, the dinosaurs being 65 million years
That's the
old.
most recent. Well, 63, I guess, with
65 million KT boundary.
Yeah. But,
So there's a recent issue of the Creation Research Society Quarterly that talks about the iDino project. It's a special report on what they're finding with dinosaur cells that they extracted, soft tissue that they extracted.
well, the collagen they're getting out of what is it, Triceratops? What's the one where they got
Triceratops horn, yeah.
Horn, yeah. The blood cells out of T-Rex. And are they getting them out of any other dinosaurs? They get any blood cells out of? I know the T-Rex is the most famous one,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they got
Triceratops, yeah.
They got some on Triceratops blood cells. Okay. Yeah, I know some soft tissue as
The
well.
half-life would be well in the thousands of years.
Yeah.
And if you were finding carbon-14 in fossils, and
Right.
carbon-14's become the creationist's friend.
Yep.
If you find carbon-14 in it, and you find carbon-14 in everything now.
Right.
And coal and limestone and something that evolutionists would expect to be millions of years old, they would then show that it was in the thousands of years.
So here's the question they asked evolution. Why do you think they never found carbon-14 before this? Because they never looked.
Yeah, right.
They never looked. Their presuppositions forbade them what they could look for. And
Carbon-14 is,
they began to find it. Yeah, the matrix of coal and diamonds.
It's formed by the interaction. We have a very nitrogen-rich atmosphere when some of these rays, these cosmic rays come in, they capture a neutron, and it turns into carbon-14, which is unstable. So that's in the air. Now, anything that's breathed that air, or ate anything that's breathed that air, is going to have carbon-14 in it.
When you die.
So if you have a bone with carbon-14 in it, that means that
The half-life
whatever it
of
was,
carbon-14 is
breathed that air, which is only going to be
3730
thousands of years old.
And so, by definition, if you find carbon-14 in it,
All right, well, we got 1 minute left, Doug. So how will we get? Not enough Stone Age graves.
yeah, there are many more things that you can find in this article on our website, in the impact article at the ICR.org site. And so I would encourage you to take a look at all these different evidences that are available.
Definitely.
For you to check out. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.